Welcome to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. Problem solvers have problems too. So here at Behind the Podium, I, Jared Cohen, and my co-host Alexander Ellis discuss the struggles, philosophies, demands, and practices of the coach, or said more broadly, health and wellness practitioner. To provide quality coaching is to enhance someone's life in an everlasting and unfolding way. This is not easy and requires a lot of due diligence and self-mastery on the part of the coach to be able to perform. So without further ado, join us as we dig deeper into the depths of the coach's mind.
Behind the Podium, here we are back again to talk all things coaching. I'm Jared Cohen.
And I'm Alexandra Ellis.
Thank you for joining us and spending some listening time. We hope this is a nice accompaniment to your drive or your chores. Or,
chores? Ew.
Dishes, unpacking.
I know. I do my podcast listening while doing the laundry and things like that.
Making food sometimes is another one for preparing, even meal prepping.
Yes.
And
all the places you do podcasts.
Yeah, I consider podcasting, or rather podcast listening, a productive form of multitasking.
Oh, yes. Totally.
A lot of people are anti-multitasking, and I agree to an extent, but I feel like sometimes with audio, multitasking can be the win.
For sure. So what's up with you, Jared?
Well, I'm here in San Diego and just moved into a new apartment.
Oh, right. I forgot.
So still standing amongst some boxes. But the pain actually was relatively painless. The pain was relatively painless?
Yeah, the pain was painless. That's good.
The move was relatively painless. The pain was painless. And hopefully I'm excited actually to confront some of the stuff and have an opportunity to throw some non-essentials away.
Totally.
How about yourself?
Well, I am now 100% self-employed, which is pretty exciting. I know it wasn't always something that was a possibility for me as a yoga teacher and a coach. So it's really exciting to have that be a possibility currently and hopefully forever for the future. I know for sure like entrepreneurship and self-employment are not for everybody, but it's always been, I will almost say like suffocating to have to help somebody else make their dreams come true. For me, I'm one of those creative souls who has more ideas than I know what to do with. Maybe I'm like a wild unicorn stallion pony. So I need to be in the wild on my own. So I'm so grateful and happy and excited and blessed and loving every single day I wake up and get to do what I want to do. There's a lot of working on my business so that I can enjoy working in my business.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations. That is a huge feat, and one that I'm sure we'll have lots of stories to tell. Is how has your day-to-day been? Have you felt was it weird at first having more of the openness in your schedule? Have you gotten a handle on that? Do you have a relative routine, or are you okay with more of the open time?
I am definitely a routine person. And so for the last 2 years, I've been using the Passion Planner. And that has been, I think we may have talked about it before, but the Passion Planner helped me in, it was last year, launch a new brand, a new website, plan a wedding, and continue working in my job and not lose any hair. So it was a very useful tool. So I actually am more routine based now. And so every day I sit down with my planner and not only reflect on the wins from the day before, even something as simple as like, hey, I, got my 10 minutes of meditation in, or I, took the dog on a 20-minute walk, or whatever that is. Celebrating the wins and then planning out what's happening for that day and for the rest of the week. And so I really try to stick to time blocks where I can be 100% focused on what I'm doing. Because if it were totally free form, I would spend way too much time on social media. Full disclosure.
Full disclosure. Do you have any tips and tricks about how you have utilized the Passion Planner? I can speak personally how you turned me on to the Passion Planner, and I really like it. I just bought my second one. But it has definitely been a learning process. Yes. There's a lot. I feel like anything that is quality in some ways is there's a lot of ways you can make it work for you, and they have a lot of sort of windows into that. There's different points in which you can reflect, and you can be one of those people that just sort of uses all of their templates, or you can make it your own more. I'm curious how you have embraced that, or how it maybe has changed since you have been more of a multi-year Passion Planner user. Yeah,
I just bought my new one too, and it came and it's blue, and the last two have been black, so it's really exciting to have some color.
Yeah, that is cool.
Well, I think as with any system or program, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And so and the weeks where I don't sit down as often with my planner as I'd like, I then feel a little bit more like stressed and overwhelmed with the things I have to do. So for my brain, the way it works, if I have it written down and I know it's coming in the pipeline, I don't even care when that is, but I know that there will be a day where I'm like, oh, today this is what I'm working on. That helps to kind of get it out of, running through my head. I definitely try to sit down at least once a week and either plan the week that's coming, or also just write down the wins, again, to really celebrate the cool stuff that happened, because I also really, really enjoy doing the monthly reflection. And so it's kind of like a journal. So that's the other cool thing about the Passion Planner, is it becomes like a little time capsule about what happened that year. And so when I write down the good stuff that happens each week, when I go back and review the whole month, it's like, oh, I forgot that happened this month. I totally spaced it, even when in that moment it was like the most transformative, amazing thing. So I always do that within the first week of the new month. So I just finished my monthly review for this month. And that to me, again, you're looking back at what's happened, and then also setting goals for what you want to do. So they also have this thing that they encourage you to do. I think it's twice a year, the Passion Roadmap, where you basically do like a brain dump about, what it is, your big goal, and then break it down into, 6-month goals, 1 year. And I did that for the first time in the middle of this year. And to be able to go back and mark some of the stuff off that list has been really exciting. It's like, oh, it's working. And I think also when we're doing stuff, just like as people, we get so tied into just like the slog of the day to day, and having a goal that you want to get to, but then also being able to mark that off your list and to have all of those be a step towards a bigger goal. I find it really rewarding,
Yeah, those micro goals, super important. So now getting into the nitty gritty a little more, do you have, like, when you wake up, is the Passion Planner one of the first things you confront or look at within the first hour of waking up?
No, my routine, I get up pretty early. My husband works in construction, and so he's out of the house before 7 a.m. And so I'm not really like cognitively awake yet. So I'll do some meditation at that time. I'll do my mobility stuff, either, rolling around on the ground, either on therapy balls or like literally rolling and doing some stretching kind of stuff. I also like to do the dishes first thing in the morning. So that happens pretty regularly. And then after I'm up and awake, is when I'll either sit down with my planner or oftentimes I'll write. That's when it works best for me, is early in the morning. You're still really clear. You don't have the to-do list yet of the day looming over you. And so I usually, as far as like sitting down at the computer and starting to work on stuff that's not creative stuff, it's usually about 10:30 or 11. Get down to business.
Okay, but will you always take a look at your planner before you get to work, or like, do you have it in your head? You kind of already know what to do. Okay.
No, that's why I have a planner, so I don't have to think about it. And I only have to think about it when I'm in that moment, when I have it open and I'm looking at it and like, okay, this is what, I want to achieve this week. This is what I'm focusing on this week. And sometimes even with that week and looking at what's happening, I'll say, I still need to do this. I know I don't have time this week. I'm going to flip forward a week or two and write it down there so that I can rest assured that it will get taken care of when it gets taken care of.
Oh, see, that's smart. That's good. That idea of seeing it where it's currently listed, recognizing it's not going to be tackled, and then rewriting it in the future.
Yeah.
I've kind of I got caught up in trying to sort of create some different notation for, if I'm looking at the week, like cross off obviously means I did it, but then like circle was like I'm recognizing it, but it didn't get done. And then like rectangle was like I'm recognizing it, but like I'm moving on. It's not happening. For me, I think the biggest struggle I've had is regularly looking at it. Like I'll get into just like, meditation or journaling, I get into good strings of time where, that's kind of part of my routine. But then, so 2 days ago, I wrote in the planner, and then yesterday I didn't look at it at all.
Right.
And it just kind of, it loses its effect when it's not something that is constantly part of my thought process, or at least assisting my thought process.
Yeah, no, and it does. And when you're not looking at it, you're not using it. So, I mean, for sure, like on the weekends, I don't look at my planner. But yeah, I mean, you have to set that time where you're going to open it up, or even just like open it up while you're working, and then, let me, see what's happening over there. But I think the cool thing about having all of the weeks in, together is that you can take stuff and be honest with yourself. Like, hey, I'm not going to get this done. Right. So let me flip forward and just write it down, and knowing like I only ever write in pencil.
Yeah.
Because I know that things are going to change and stuff is going to change, and I'm going to erase stuff and move it. And I know like on their Instagram, people make beautiful pictures in their planners in pen. And that just, I'm like, oh, how could you write in pen? Never could commit.
It's funny, the whole pencil pen thing. I feel like I haven't used pencil in a while, but you've just inspired me to embrace the meaningfulness of the eraser. Yeah. But I just remember some kind of weird, arbitrary line in the sand of like when I went from some point in grade school to using a pencil. It was like there were these different tiers of evolution. It was, you had your number 2 pencil, and then once you got to like 6th or 7th grade, you were cool enough to actually have a mechanical pencil.
Yes.
And then once you were in high school, it was like, teachers aren't going to give you such a hard time anymore if you're not using pencil. So rock the pen.
Right.
And I feel like I haven't really had a pencil on hand since then. Yeah,
I feel like the the return of my pencil was the planner. And if you really don't want to commit, you could always write stuff on Post-it notes and move those around.
Yeah.
So there's still that. I do have like some color coding that happens with highlighters, because I have discovered that if you write something in pencil and then you highlight over it, it's really hard to erase. I don't know why. So I'll do that for, like a class that I'm teaching. Like, that's not going to change. I'm not going to back out of that.
Right.
And then when I'm like, no, I need to do this task. Like, so all my meditations are highlighted. So if you don't do them, then I just feel guilty. Like, oh, I said I was going to do it and I didn't do it.
So you'll even put, the sort of the daily stuff in there too, like meditate and not even just the kind of one-offs.
I even do some of my meal planning. So I will plan, what I'm going to make each night for dinner. And then that helps me craft my grocery list, but I'll write that under each day as well.
Cool.
I like to plan a lot.
She's a planning queen. Well, speaking of which, her planning has paid off.
Woo-hoo!
And you have just released the Self-Care Starter Guide.
The Startup Guide, yeah.
Startup Guide.
There we go.
Startup. It's not like a starter pack of, baseball cards, guys. Come on. It's a startup, like start me up, Rolling Stones. In one sentence, describe the Self-Care Startup Guide.
The Self-Care Startup Guide is a guided mobility practice for the person who is either too busy to want to think about their daily practice or just doesn't know where to start. So there are 15 days of strength, stretch, mobility, and mindfulness and meditation, so that you have a total body approach to self-care and wellness, guided. I'll hold your hand so that you don't have to think about it.
That's awesome. And how long has this been a brainchild of yours?
Ooh, I could flip back in my passion planner because there's, the free space in the bottom right-hand corner where I'll like jot ideas down. And I know it got written down in there many, many months ago. I was listening to my students in my classes, and students were asking for more resources. Like, well, I have my therapy balls. I have all this equipment at home. I just don't know what to do. So I in the morning, and I'm sure it's probably, or, whatever time of day you do your self-care, Jared, I just do what feels good. For those of us who've been practicing something for a long time, we're pretty intuitive about what to do. But for people who are newer to it, or maybe just not the creative brain like you and I are, this is that answer to, well, what should I do today?
That's great. I really like how hand-holding it is, but yet at the end of the day, it's ultimately empowering, right? Because that's the purpose of self-care. So what better way to handhold and then let go? What are you hoping is the outcome when someone gets to the end of their 15th day?
Like you said, I hope to empower them to feel confident that they know enough to take their self-care practice wherever it is that they want to go. So 15 days is a really good start to building a habit. It's obviously not the be-all, end-all. I mean, there's some programs that are 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and, we still fall back into our habits unless we truly want to make a change. But the Self-Care Startup Guide gives you, a sampling of what you can do for the entire body. And you can pick and choose as you go along beyond the 15 days. And also just then utilize what's available online already. There's a lot of stuff out there, but if you have an idea of like, oh, this is how I can program, this is how I can think about it, that it doesn't have to be a 1 hour thing. I don't have to have my yoga clothes on. I don't have to have my yoga mat out. I can just do something. And one of the days is, and I owe this to my dog, is just to get outside without technology and be in the moment. And so I call it, a moving or a walking meditation, because we're so tied into technology and stuff all the time that we forget to be in the present moment. And if you have a dog and you've ever taken your dog on a walk, you see how 100% they are in the moment, especially when a squirrel walks by. And so, yeah, like self-care can happen without equipment. It can happen anywhere, and just empowering people to kind of recognize that and realize that and try to do more of that so that they can feel better in their bodies.
Yeah, I really like how there's an availability to self-care in a way that, you mentioned you don't have to be in your yoga clothes. There's now an understanding of, hey, I can do this when I'm waiting for my airplane to take off. Mm-hmm. And also the aspect of reminders, there's all these mm-hmm. things we know, right? But it doesn't, but we need the reminders. And something that is this well crafted brings about such good reminders, like your walking meditation. It's like we recognize that we're way too attached to our technology, and that arguably we almost see every moment as a moment to do another thing, right? So kind of now mm-hmm. the antithesis to my positive multitasking point at the beginning of the podcast. But just the reminder of like, no, like I need to, for my self-care, invest in and accumulate more time where I am technology free, and allow that investment to pay itself back. Mm-hmm. Speaking of reminders, I was thinking about this idea as I've been working with some youth golf players as a part of one of my sports psychology internships.
Oh,
and
cool.
Been playing with this idea of of reminders with a 3x5 note card. So being able to write down some essentials that will keep you present or focused or remotivated or more emotionally invested during those times where it's easy to waver from that ideal. And one of the inspirations for it came from when you think about being back in high school and having a test where you were allowed only a 3x5 note card,
and this squished everything you could onto that.
Yeah, right. Well, and you kind of start thinking about that now of like, okay, I know I've read a lot of these books and I've watched a lot of these videos and I've been inspired by Creative Live, and it's like, it's all there, but how do I actually like take this with me on the go? Or how do I start getting in the habit of having regular reminders that are going to help me veer back onto a better course of action? And so back to the self-care startup guide, I really like the way in which, you've set it up where each day there are these, these purposeful reminders that with a first glance, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's pretty basic. But it's like, no, it's those basic things that we tend to forget or not put as much attention to because we have this, false logic of, oh yeah, we know that. So similarly, I had this aha moment being on the highway, and they have, mm-hmm. The screen where it's like, beware of, motorcyclists,
right.
And you're like, and I first read that, I'm like, yeah, okay, obviously, but it's like, oh no, like those guys come out of nowhere,
Right.
And just so again, it's like, as a driver, that wasn't telling me something I didn't already know, but it acted as a purposeful reminder to get me back in the moment when driving, I can otherwise become very, this sort of like, ongoing record player, of thoughts. And by the time I get to where I wanted to go, I've like totally, the 20 minutes have gone.
Yeah.
And I have like, no idea, or a recollection of actually being on the highway.
Everyone knows. Oh, I know the same thing happens to me too. I'm just like, oh shoot, I was thinking.
Yeah, right. I was thinking, and it's like a guilty omission.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the car too, because I am so attached to my cell phone. In the car, I'm not. You can't. You're driving. You know, it's in the trunk, and so it also like that's a unique opportunity for me in the car to be able to really think without extra distraction. But you're supposed to be driving at the same time.
Wow, do you actually put your phone in the trunk?
Sometimes I do, or it's in the door.
Because I'm going to totally start doing that. I will admit I am not good.
Don't admit it. Don't admit it.
I'm not as hands-free as I should be. Kind of a multitasker when driving.
Yeah, you should put your phone in the trunk. It's really great.
But that is pretty good.
Do you have Bluetooth in your car?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, put your phone in the trunk. You can still talk on the phone.
Oh, that's good. That's good. The problem is, like, you know, because then I want to listen to podcasts and.
Well, like any responsible driver, you press play before you put the car in drive.
This is true.
You know, iTunes does have that up next playlist or whatever, and you can create playlists on your podcast app too.
Yeah. No, I think I just need to start, you know, kind of putting in the trunk and just leave it at that. And because I actually am one of those few people too that has CDs in my car.
What are those?
And so arguably I can still have my music fix, and I don't need to use an additional excuse of saying that, you know, I need my phone to man the tunes. So
CDs. I think I've had the same CD in my car for like 3 years.
Yeah, see, that's even cool.
I never play it. Oh dear.
Do you know what that CD is?
I do. I think it's like a Christian pop CD.
Okay.
You know, sometimes I just really need to pick me up, and so
yeah,
pop on that CD.
Those Christian pop songs, they're like
they're really uplifting,
grabbing, you know, fist raising. I feel it.
It's either that or Britney Spears. So now I'm really embarrassed.
It's okay. I think what would be more interesting is how well you remember all the lyrics after pressing play, and not having listened to it in 3 years. I think you'll surprise yourself.
Not very well. But actually, like, I enjoy listening to music I don't know the lyrics to. Like, if I need to focus, I'll put music on that I don't know. Right. And even for me, classical music that I'm familiar with is distracting because I want to hum the tune.
Yeah.
You got to do some weird stuff you don't know.
Speaking of that, and back to the self-care startup guide, before we started recording, I'm actually rolling my feet right now.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, I was rolling my feet before we started recording as well, and I was listening to music. And then I came up with this awesome foot, you know, the listeners can't see it, but I'll try my best to explain it, where it's basically like I'm, you know, doing my air guitar, and then I have the ball under the foot that's a little bit off at an angle in front, and that foot is acting as like the foot that's pressing down the pedals.
Right.
And I'm just kind of bobbing back and forth.
Rocking out.
So it's also another imaginary inspired dance you can morph within the self-care and again give a little homage to your muse.
Yeah, you just got to fit it in wherever. And I know because I'm a person, like, I can come up with all these creative things for, you know, mobility and self-care. And when it comes to strength training and working out, I don't want to have to think about it. And that's why I'm so grateful for our work together, because you tell me what to do at the gym. And so having somebody tell you what to do is awesome, because then you can be more fully invested in what you're doing. So that's another piece I was trying to, or problem I was trying to answer with the startup guys. Like, here, let me just tell you what to do so you don't have to worry.
Yeah, totally. And back to this bigger theme of coaches need coaches.
Yeah.
They say the old adage that is a doctor that has himself as his doctor, or something about, I've now really butchered this, but a doctor that is a doctor for himself is like a fool or something, to that effect, that, even in the MD world, they frown upon MDs trying to be their own MDs.
Yeah.
And, gotta cut down the ego a little bit and recognize the truth of the fact that you can't read the label if you're inside the bottle. And I heard
Very
that
true.
from Mr. Mark Devine of Seal Fits.
Oh.
That
That's very wise.
Yeah.
Well, it's always good to have a second opinion and a fresh set of eyes to have you work on your weaknesses. Because we're really good at doing what we like and doing what we're good at all the time. But it's uncovering your own blind spots, whether that's in your, process of planning, it's in your body, it's in your preparation, whatever that is. Easier to continue to stay on our path of just like, I'm really good at this, I'm just going to keep doing this.
Is there one self-care item from one of the days that you would say is most difficult for you to do regularly?
Ooh. I would probably... Ooh, that was a good... I wasn't ready for that question, Jared. Boom. I'm thinking maybe some of the... Ooh, I don't know. Because meditation was a big blind spot for me for a long time. And a couple weeks ago, I just put it out there on the internet. Hey guys, 7 days, let's do it. And that's helped me to make it a more regular practice. I try to get to it every day. It doesn't always happen every day, but at least, 3 to 4 times a week. And I found that to be supremely helpful. So I would say that was my biggest blind spot, and it is no longer.
So now,
ish.
I guess creating a little bit of a differentiation between blind spot and difficulty pursuing. Is there one exercise, self-care exercise, that you're more resistant to the kind of process of, whether it's like, when I roll out my upper back, it's just super painful, or just one that you find, like, even, the walking meditation, that it's more difficult for you to kind of let go in that moment? Is there one that has more internal resistance than others, that is more just about, hey, it's become a blind spot because I've forgotten to do it, or it was a blind spot because I just didn't make time for it?
I think as we've already spoken about, driving in the car and like, it's when I think, and even when attempting to be mindful, whether it's the walking meditation or, a guided meditation here at home, the practice of staying mindful and in the moment is very difficult.
Yeah.
And I constantly have my mind wandering. And so trying to bring it back to the breath every single time and not getting lost in my thoughts, because that is super easy. Like we were saying, like, oh shoot, how did I get to my destination? I don't know what happened. So that for sure would be a work in progress always.
Yeah. Yeah. The mindfulness is, it's crazy. Just how difficult that is to tame.
Yeah.
I was stand-up paddleboarding yesterday, and man, my mind was just going like crazy. Even I got all caught up in like which way the paddle was supposed to be facing, and because I thought it was a certain way, and I was with my girlfriend, and I told her that at the beginning, and then she sort of mentioned she mentioned it halfway through, like, I don't think this is right, and then I was just like, my like fixated obsessive mind was just like, and then like I'm out on the water, like just like flipping it back and forth, and like no longer enjoying the moment because I'm just like so obsessed about like solving this problem. And then I became aware of it, and I'm like, really trying to just like get back into like just enjoy the water and like the setting sun, and it's just amazing how you can get there for about 5 seconds and then like it just jumps.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's so much is about the consistency, of which I'll actually throw in a quote here that was just sent to me. I believe this, my friend that just sent this to me got this off of the Daily Stoic website and email listing, if you're not already on that, which I also believe was started by Ryan Holiday, who we've mentioned on the podcast before, and whom we hope to get on the podcast. But this is a quote from Seneca, and it says, "Making noble resolutions is not as important as keeping the resolutions you have already made." And I think that is right on point in terms of that consistency. And I know what's a big struggle for me, and I think most people can empathize with this, is once you get off of a certain consistency, getting back on is always so difficult because we are so resistant to reconciling the time that's passed. And it's, again, one of these illogical beliefs, because obviously the more time we are frustrated by that, the more time passes, and that reconciliation only becomes harder. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, being mindful to just make the time in that moment, and then reward that win in the planner or somewhere else.
Celebrate the win.
And then you're moving forward and trying to ride the momentum as best you can.
Yeah. Totally. Yes. Yeah, I'm just imagining it like it is almost like stand-up paddleboarding. And if I've never been, I want to go. It sounds really cool. Awesome. But I envision it as like, if you're not focused, I'm surprised you didn't fall on your face in the water.
I'm pretty, like, my balance these days, like, I'm on it.
But, like, we get distracted and then, you fall off. But, hey, guess what? You get back on. It's okay.
Right, yeah. And actually, that's the best, like, if only we could have more of those dramatic but safe jolts to pull us back, like falling into the water. I feel like that would tame us a little bit better, because it also the addition of the cold water just kind of like, and then having to get back on that board and shake it off and start again.
Mm-hmm. Which I think would also be letting go of perfectionism. Would be a wonderful topic to explore. Next episode.
Definitely. A couple other things I want to mention about the self-care startup guide and have you also riff on a little bit. I really like we've already kind of touched on this indirectly, but just to make it known, the journal aspect that you have put along with the video content and the specific exercise modality programming. And particularly with the journal, you're having people reflect on the body part or the component that was the self-care piece for that day. Mm-hmm. And I think that really brings home this topic of mindfulness, and also the ability to reflect and self-evaluate and actually practice tuning in when otherwise, we can do something for ourselves like self-care, and then quickly become oblivious to the positive effect that had or didn't have or any effect at all.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting thing will be, if you follow or you use a journal every single day at the end of day 15 to look back to how you were reporting how you felt and how you were sleeping and how different body parts felt, because there is a little bit of not necessarily repetition, but things come back. And so you can see like, oh, wow, on day 7, I was, sleeping this way. But then by the end, I was able to sleep through the night, or actually get 7.5 hours, 8 hours of sleep, or actually feel rested in the morning, or whatever that is. I think the reflection component, like we talked about with the Passion Planner and also with the Self-Care Startup Guide, it's super important, and it's missing. We're so busy. If we're like, doing whatever we're doing, then we move on to the next thing, and gotta celebrate the wins and look back to really then appreciate how far you've progressed.
Yeah, the reflection is so huge, and it's been one of the most eye-opening things of this sports psychology master's program, is how much of that has been emphasized and asked of ourselves as students to then practice what we preach, and obviously become better at the skill of reflection, which it is a skill, and then also be able to coach that with those that you're working with. And, one thing that I've started thinking about and coaching with the reflection is using it also as like a little life editor in a sense. Something happens, and, oftentimes you may you may find you're writing more about the things that didn't go so well, but okay, in that moment, can you kind of write how you wish it, or how you would have liked to approach it differently? Like we all have these kind of emotional moments where we have lapses in what we're going to do that in retrospect we wish we did a little differently, and the opportunity to sort of edit it in the journal can then prime us for how to be better the next time, and also make peace with how sometimes we can be a little hard on ourselves. And, even reflecting, like, I'm frustrated that this is the first time I've reflected in 2 weeks,
positive reframe.
Yeah, sure. Right. And having the journal as a part of that practice of positively reframing is, I think, another unique use of it. And like you said, there's not only this value presently while you're doing it, but the retrospective aspect, the data that's accumulating that can be really eye-opening and useful if you use it in that way, to then sort of look back and see the trends and kind of make notes about like, oh, wow, I had this realization, or I wasn't even aware that I was writing down this same feeling every time. And now, let me think more about like, what is that feeling, and why was it always coming up in these similar circumstances? And we become much better at observing ourselves, and I think then ultimately cutting ourselves a little more slack, because we have some more of that insight about what's happening.
For sure. For sure.
Well, I think we'll end there. Definitely encourage people to check out the Self-Care Startup Guide.
Thank you.
It's really, this self-care piece is huge, and we all need, ourselves included, some help in just the reminder of self-care for the day, the kind of self-care we can be doing, and the assistance in then being able to more freely create our own self-care exercises, and the ability to improvise when we feel like we don't have the time or we're not in the right environment to perform self-care with a little bit of the template to begin with, we can get better at figuring out how to make that work for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, do you have any final things to note on the Self-Care Startup Guide, or any things you want to leave us with?
Well, if you're interested in the Self-Care Startup Guide, you can find it at aewellness.com. And the Passion Planner was a huge piece in helping me birth this behemoth of a project and bringing it to fruition. So it all kind of comes full circle, I suppose. But it's really exciting to be able to expand my potential reach beyond just students in my classroom to sharing it with people who I've connected with over social media and the internet, and may not ever have the chance to meet in person, but I can still share, what I've learned to help them help themselves.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And the Passion Planner, we should try and get those folks on the podcast.
Heck yeah.
But it's another cool example. It just hit me. We've been talking about it so much, but I'm sure they have the same type of inspiration in which they were looking for something to solve their problem or help others solve their problem of not being able to plan and brainstorm and journal all in the same place and do it as productively as possible. And so, there again is that template, one in which it has room for the person to individualize it. And there again, we see the help of others to help ourselves. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And the Passion Planner was created by a 25-year-old girl, Angelia Trinidad.
Trinidad?
Yeah, no, she's freaking awesome. And she's a kid. I mean, I feel like a kid. But yeah, like fresh out of college and like, hey, I have a problem and I want to solve it. And I know I'm not the only one who has this problem. So yeah, we should talk to her. That would be awesome.
Super cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Check out the Self-Care Startup Guide, and we will be back soon. I am Jared Cohen. You can find more at behindthepodiumpodcast.com.
Show notes and bios galore. So much fun.
Later.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. If you have enjoyed what you listened to, head over to iTunes and leave us a review. More information on each episode and the podcast in general can be found at behindthepodiumpodcast.com. We'll catch you next time.